So hip pain, it is a very common issue, and there is a whole myriad of different reasons as to why someone might be experiencing hip pain to begin with. Now, I'm not here to give you the exact protocol for your specific case, as that is going to be different from individual to individual. But what we are going to cover in this video is 4 different techniques that you can utilize that kind of cover general hip problems, as well as go over some of the underlying causes as to why you might be experiencing hip pain to begin with. The pelvis plays a crucial role in just about every movement that we can find ourselves doing, from basic hinge mechanics to walking to going into extension. The pelvis is going to be kind of the midpoint between a lot of those movements. So it's safe to say that we should have some programming in our exercise or movement routine that is focused on the hips. Now, one of the primary reasons why someone might be experiencing hip pain to begin with is just due to lack of movement. So a good place to start might be just moving more in general. A lot of people tend to live pretty sedentary lives, and as a result, a lot of the muscles, the fascia, and just the tissues around our hips kind of start to congeal and almost get stuck to the hip joints themselves. So a nice, easy thing to incorporate might just be daily walks, just walking for 15-20 minutes. And that in of itself might just start to get these tissues to move around and start to provide a little bit more mobility through the pelvis. Now, if you're anything like me and you're very much a go-getter and want to consistently be doing something, and the hips are the thing that is holding you back, then likely what is happening is it's a lack of a well-functioning muscle in around the hips themselves that is kind of leading to a lack of support when you actually go through movement. So in that case, some release work in conjunction with some light corrective exercise and rhythmic exercise is probably going to be your best bet. And that is exactly what we are going to get into now. All right, so for our first technique, you're going to want to grab a softball or something right around that size and density. And we're going to start with a psoas release. And the reason why we're starting with a psoas release is because it's one of the muscles that attaches both to our hip as well as into the vertebrae right in our lumbar spine. I believe it's T12, L4, somewhere right in there. So what we're going to start to do is just a release kind of right through this muscle, which is located on either side. So what I like to do is take the softball, I'll kind of locate my belly button, and then I take a half roll. And you're going to generally be on the psoas right around that area. So all we're going to do is I'm going to locate my belly button. I'll take my half roll. I'm going to bring myself down. And all you're going to do is just kind of softly start to sit into that. And you might feel that there's a little bit of just tension or resistance there to begin with. And just kind of slowly begin to ease your way into that. And this should actually provide a release through your lower back as well as into the tissues around the hips. Eventually, once the muscle releases, you can almost lay all the way down. I would hang out here for anywhere between about, holy smokes, I'm covered. Anywhere between about 2 to 3 minutes. You don't really have to go anything more than that. The muscle and the fascia should generally release within that time frame. All right, for our next technique, now that we have the psoas and some of the tissues around the hip a little bit looser, we are going to start to dynamically kind of go through a integrative stretch. So we're going to work through some hip rockers, is what I like to call them. I'll give you a side profile view. So essentially I'm kind of in this classic hip flexor stretch. And what I'm going to start with is pushing off my front foot, and I'm going to sit my hips back. So I'm going to go from here, and then my hips come back. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of loading into this left hip, so my left hip flexor, the quad, even a little bit into this hamstring. And then I'm going to pull with my right foot going back this way. And as I pull, my hips come forward, and I go more into kind of this conventional type hip flexor stretch. And all I'm going to do is kind of rock myself back and forth off of that. So it's going to be a push back, and then it's going to be a pull back, and I come forward. Push forward, and pull back. And a lot of this motion is all happening from that front foot. What you can even do alongside this is incorporate just a little bit of rotation with the upper body. So I can kind of sit back. I'm kind of square here. And then as I pull from this foot, I'm then gonna come over my lead leg. So I'll come from here, I'm over my lead leg, and then I'll just sit right back. What I'd work through is probably about 8 to 12 repetitions on either side. And you should feel the hips open up quite a bit. So I'll give you a preview on this side as well. So I sit, you can even feel that hamstring a little bit here, and then I pull. And you can go pretty quick through this and make it pretty dynamic. And especially on this side, I tend to be a little bit more restrictive. So I can actually feel that psoas release that we were working on before. I can actually feel that tissue unloading a little bit more. If this is a little bit hard on the knees, then you can definitely put something underneath your knee, and that should make the motion a little bit easier for you. And that'll be a great way to dynamically open up the pelvis. All right, so for this last one, you're gonna wanna tuck your shirt in, because that way you know you mean business. And we're gonna start to integrate some hip stability, as well as work on kind of a general rhythm here. So first and foremost, what I'm gonna get you to do is just come into this split stance position. I'm gonna get you to work on just sitting your hips back. I can kind of feel my hamstring and my glute grab there a little bit. And then I'm just going to stand up with that. Maybe go through just like 3 to 5 repetitions here, just kind of working on this general hinge mechanic. Because ultimately, the better I can hinge, the more stability I'm ultimately gonna have. And you're gonna wanna try to be mindful that this knee isn't overextending. You can see when I extend, my hips just kind of loosely shift back, and that's not gonna really provide a good basis of support for my hips to operate from. So once you kind of get the gist of this positioning, you're feeling kind of stable here, you should kind of feel like you're ready to do something, like I'm ready to take off, to move side to side, whatever it might be. And then once I'm here, I'm just gonna kind of work a rotation with my arm. So I'm just creating almost like a little bit of a pendulum, and I can feel all those muscles in around my legs starting to get tested around this rhythm. If you struggle to create kind of like a body weight rhythm, then what I would encourage you to do is maybe grab a kettlebell, a dumbbell, a club bell, grab a stick, something that is going to create a little bit of force for you to work around. So then that way, when I come into my split stance position, I'm kind of forced to almost work around this tool. So now you can see I got my base of support, and then this is just the rhythm that I am working around. And now we're incorporating all the parts of the previous exercises that we worked on kind of in one shot. And I would work probably anywhere about 8 to 12 repetitions there, and you should feel like you got kind of an adequate workout through all the muscles on the back side, maybe through a little bit on the front side of the legs there. And that is going to be a great way for us to work on that pelvic stability, as well as use it as a tool for a movement pattern that we'd commonly find ourselves doing, such as going back and forth, as an example. Working in that unilateral position is going to be really important, because that is where we primarily operate from on a day-to-day basis. Anyways, that is going to be all for this week's video on how to address your hip pain, as well as some of the underlying causes behind it. Hopefully you learned something new throughout this video, and if you did, something that would help me a lot is if you shared this with someone who you think might benefit from information such as this, as well as you can like and subscribe to the channel. I post a video about once a week around content similar to this, so if that's something you're into, then I hope to see you in future videos. Until next time, make sure you are prioritizing, and then you are optimizing. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.